It was the kind of meeting where the air feels thinner the moment you walk in. A Monday all hands, a glass boardroom, 12 chairs filled, 2 executives on video, 1 HR representative pretending to take notes for alignment. My boss, Graham Voss, stood at the front like the room was his stage. He clicked through slides, missed targets, delayed projects, a quarter bleeding out in red numbers. Then he slows down. He stops on a slide titled Efficiency Gaps, and he turns, not to the room, to me. "Alex," he says, loud enough to make sure it becomes a memory, "I need you to understand something." He pauses, and the pause is deliberate. "You are useless." A few people laugh, small laughs, nervous laughs, the kind of sound people make when they'd rather betray someone else than get noticed. Graham continues, enjoying it. "You don't drive revenue, you don't close deals, you don't lead. You just analyze. And right now, analysis isn't helping anyone." He taps the screen. "This quarter is bleeding. Your work is noise." I could have defended myself. I had the emails where I warned him, the reports he ignored, the client risks he dismissed. But I didn't argue. I didn't flinch. I just nodded once and said, "Understood." Graham smiled, satisfied, because he thought that was submission. He didn't realize it was a line being drawn, because 90 days later, I walked back into that building, not as his employee, not as his subordinate, but as the majority owner of the rival company Brightwell was about to lose its biggest client to. And when Graham saw me, the first word out of his mouth was, "You?" The company was called Brightwell Systems. We sold B2B supply chain software, big contracts, long cycles, and the kind of clients who don't forgive mistakes twice. From the outside, Brightwell looked impressive. Glass lobby, minimalist branding, a receptionist trained to speak in soft confidence. Inside, it was something else. Brightwell didn't reward outcomes. It rewarded optics. People got promoted for being aligned, not for being correct. Truth was useful only when it didn't disrupt the story leadership wanted to tell. And Graham Voss was the perfect product of that culture. Graham wasn't the smartest person in the building, but he was the most polished. And polish sells, especially upward. He was director of commercial strategy, positioned between sales and product, meaning he controlled the narrative whenever something went wrong. If revenue was up, it was because of Graham's vision. If revenue was down, it was because someone else didn't execute his strategy. He had the classic toolkit: public criticism to establish dominance, private compliments to create dependence, moving goalposts so no one ever feels safe, threats disguised as feedback. And his favorite weapon was humiliation. Not correction, humiliation. Because correction fixes problems. Humiliation creates fear, and fear makes people obedient. I was a senior analyst on the strategy team. My job was to see problems before they became disasters. That meant forecasts, churn risk, client help, support tickets, implementation timelines, the boring stuff, the stuff executives claim to love until it contradicts their confidence. My work created paper trails, and paper trails are dangerous when you're trying to sell a narrative. Brightwell had one client that mattered more than the rest: Northbridge Logistics. A large contract, a high-profile logo, a renewal worth more than 3 smaller clients combined. If Northbridge renewed, leadership could pretend the quarter was stable. If Northbridge left, leadership would panic. And I knew something Graham didn't want to hear. Northbridge wasn't unhappy. Northbridge was quietly preparing to leave. I saw it in the signals. Support escalations were increasing. Their operations lead stopped attending roadmap calls. Their usage patterns shifted. Less adoption, more workarounds. Their procurement team requested benchmark comparisons, which is corporate language for "we're shopping." So I built a retention risk report. Clear, specific, not emotional, just truth. I took it to Grant. I remember his office. Clean desk, framed quotes, a glass of water he never drank. I put the report in front of him and said, "If we don't stabilize Northbridge, they will exit within 2 quarters." Graham scanned the first page.
Then he leaned back, smiling like I'd brought him an overreaction. You worry too much. This isn't worry, I said calmly. It's risk. Graham smiled wider. Risk is a story people tell when they can't sell confidence. Then he did what he always did. He ignored the reality and doubled down on the performance. He told sales to push an upsell package. He told product to promise new features. He told support to tighten communication. In other words, he told everyone to work harder to keep his narrative alive. And when Northbridge complained, loudly, Graham needed a scapegoat.
My report wasn't useful anymore. It was evidence. So he did what toxic leaders do to evidence. He tried to destroy the credibility of the person holding it. That Monday all hands, that useless line, that wasn't spontaneous. That was defensive strategy. Because if I was useless, then my warning never mattered. And if my warning never mattered, then Graham could claim no one saw it coming. After the humiliation, the building got quieter around me. People didn't look at me in the hallway. They spoke softer when I entered rooms. They avoided being seen too close to a target. I didn't blame them. That's how fear works. My co-worker Nina passed me near the coffee machine and whispered, "I'm sorry." I nodded, because apologies don't change systems. That night, I didn't call friends to complain. I didn't post vague quotes on social media. I opened my laptop at home and created a document titled 90 Days. Then I wrote 3 headings: leverage, options, timing. I pulled up my email archive, not because I was planning revenge, because I needed a map. I needed to know exactly what had happened, who said what, and where the truth lived. And the truth lived in writing. My warning emails, Graham's dismissive responses, client health summaries, meeting notes where I flagged risk. I kept reading until one line jumped out like a flare. A message from Northbridge's operations lead months earlier. We need stability. We can't keep living in escalations. Stability. I stared at that word for a long time. Then I asked myself a simple question. If Brightwell refuses to give them stability, who will? That's when my plan stopped being about leaving. It became about building something better. Because the strongest revenge in business isn't destruction, it's displacement. Replacing someone's power by becoming the better option. 2 days later, a recruiter emailed me. Normally, I ignore recruiter emails. Most are generic, but the subject line was different. Confidential, senior leadership opportunity, supply chain SaaS. I took the call after work. The recruiter spoke carefully, like this wasn't just hiring. We're working with a company that wants to compete more aggressively, she said. They need someone who understands the market. What company? I asked. She hesitated. Larkstone Technologies. Larkstone was Brightwell's rival. Smaller, faster, hungrier, not as polished, but known for execution. I didn't react. I asked questions. What's the actual problem they're solving? What's the timeline? Who's funding it? What authority would the role have? Then she said the sentence that changed everything. The board is open to an equity-based structure, possibly a controlling stake through a new investment arrangement. That wasn't a job offer. That was a doorway. I scheduled the meeting, not with HR, with the board rep. His name was Evan Rourke. Evan didn't start with my resume. He started with a chess question. What does Brightwell think is true that isn't? He asked. I didn't smile. Brightwell thinks Northbridge is trapped, I said. They're not. Evan leaned forward. How sure are you? I'm sure enough that they're benchmarking, I replied. They're looking for stability and honesty. Evan watched me. Then he asked, if I gave you authority, what would you do in 90 days? I answered without hesitation. I'd build a transition plan Northbridge can't refuse. Evan's expression shifted. That was the first time I felt it. Not revenge. Momentum. People assume you steal clients by whispering rumors. You don't. You win clients by solving pain. Larkstone didn't need drama. They needed execution. So we built a plan around 3 promises. Simple, measurable. Reliability, support and uptime. Stability, no chaotic roadmap lies. Accountability, clear owners, clear escalation.
I joined Larkstone under a leadership agreement that gave me decision authority. And the first thing I did wasn't sales, it was structure. I rebuilt internal support workflows. I hired 2 experienced account leads quietly. I created a no surprises escalation protocol. And I didn't do any of it loudly, because corporate moves don't need noise, they need results. Within 4 weeks, we had a package ready for Northbridge, a 90-day stabilization plan, a dedicated support team, a transparent roadmap with hard no's and realistic deadlines, a pricing model aligned with performance, not promises. Meanwhile, at Brightwell, Graham was still performing, still pushing upsells, still blaming product, still making meetings about alignment. Then Heaven called me one Friday evening. His voice was calm, but I could hear the weight. "We're moving to restructure ownership," he said. "What does that mean?" I asked. "It means the board wants a face," he replied. "A leader with credibility. Someone who can sit across from clients and say, 'We won't treat you the way they did.'" He paused. "And the investors want that leader to have real control."
I knew what he was offering. This wasn't a fantasy cash buyout. This was a structured acquisition. Equity, performance-based capital, and a controlling stake tied to business outcomes. In plain terms, if we landed the right client, I would become the majority owner of Lockstone. And I already knew which client would decide that. Northbridge. The last 10 days before the Northbridge Vendor Summit were quiet. That's what people don't understand. Big corporate shifts don't happen with music swelling. They happen with calendars, contracts, and careful silence. I rehearsed the meeting in my mind, not to humiliate Graham, to prevent him from controlling the room. Because Graham's biggest talent wasn't strategy, it was domination through performance. So we built a meeting structure designed to neutralize that. No arguments, no accusations, no drama, just clarity. We prepared one document that mattered more than any slide deck, a single-page summary titled "What Northbridge Asked For versus What They Received." Simple, brutal, true. We didn't even mention Brightwell by name. We didn't have to. Northbridge knew. The Northbridge Vendor Summit took place in a downtown conference center. Brightwell arrived like it owned the room. Polished suits, branded folders, forced smiles. Graham walked in with confidence like armor. He thought Northbridge would complain, then stay, because clients often do, until they don't. I walked in behind Evan. Different suit, different badge, same calm. Graham didn't notice me at first. He was too busy talking. Then he turned, and his face changed like the floor dropped. "You," he said. I nodded once. "Graham?" I replied. "Good to see you." He recovered quickly, because that's what performers do. He laughed. "Well, this is unexpected," he said. "So you left Brightwell?" "Yes." "And now you work for them?" he asked, nodding toward Larkstone. I held his gaze. "I lead them." His smile twitched. Northbridge's procurement director, Monica Hale, entered with 2 team leads. She didn't smile much. Procurement rarely does. Evan stepped forward. "Monica," he said, "thank you for having us. This is Alex Mason, our CEO and majority owner." There it was, the sentence that ended Graham's control. Graham's throat tightened. He tried to speak, but nothing came out clean. Monica sat down. "We'll keep this simple," she said. "We need reliability, stability, and truth." Graham launched into promises. He talked about new initiatives, improved support, accelerated timelines. He performed confidence. Monica let him finish, then she turned to me. "Alex," she said, "what's your approach?" I didn't attack Brightwell. I didn't insult Graham. I did something worse for him. I spoke like an adult in a room full of exhausted professionals. "We won't promise what we can't deliver," I said. "We'll show you what we can deliver, and we'll execute with full transparency." I slid the 90-day stabilization plan across the table. Week by week, I continued. Named owners, escalation path, measurable outcomes. If we miss a milestone, you'll know exactly why before it becomes your problem. Monica scanned it. Her face didn't brighten. It hardened with recognition because she finally saw a vendor treating her like a partner,
not a target. Graham tried to interrupt. Monica raised a hand without looking at him. "Not yet," she said. Graham stopped. That alone was devastating. Monica asked one final question, directed at Bridewell. "Why did you ignore our concerns for a year?" Graham smiled thinly. "We didn't ignore them." Monica nodded slowly. Then she projected an email timeline on the screen. Northbridge complaint after complaint, delayed responses, missed milestones, broken promises. And in the middle of that timeline, a forwarded internal note. One Graham had circulated once, trying to dismiss it. A note written by me. "If we don't stabilize Northbridge, they will leave for a competitor." My name, my warning, my timestamp. Monica looked at Graham. "So you had the warning," she said, "and still chose to upsell us instead." Graham's face drained. He looked at me like I had betrayed him, but I hadn't. I warned the company. He ignored it. I didn't create his consequences. I just stopped absorbing them. Monica closed her laptop. "We're moving forward with Lockstone," she said, effective immediately. Graham sat perfectly still, and for the first time, he looked genuinely afraid. Not because he lost the deal, because he knew what losing Northbridge would do to him internally. He built his power on optics, and optics were about to collapse. The real consequence didn't happen in that room. It happened after. Brightwell leadership called emergency meetings. Sales screamed about pipeline. Finance asked hard questions. And Graham, who loved public performance, was forced into private accountability. A week later, my phone buzzed. It was Nina, the coworker who had whispered, "I'm sorry," after the humiliation.
Her message was short. Graham got removed. No celebration, just reality. Bridewell called it strategic restructuring. Of course, they always do. But everyone inside knew the truth. He dismissed warnings. He humiliated the person who saw it coming. He lost the client. And when the consequences arrived, he had nothing left but excuses. I didn't win by yelling. I didn't win by embarrassing him the way he embarrassed me. I won by building something he couldn't compete with. Here's what the story is really about. When someone calls you useless, they're often revealing their fear. Fear that you can't be controlled. Fear that you see the truth. Fear that you'll leave and take your value somewhere else. Sometimes revenge isn't destruction. Sometimes revenge is building a better place and letting the people who underestimated you watch you win from the outside. If this story hit close to home, tell me in the comments. Have you ever been humiliated at work, publicly? And what did you do after? Subscribe to Alex Mason Stories for more workplace revenge stories where humiliation turns into strategy and justice arrives with precision.